This candidate, you say, I shall not vote for him, for he does not display public virtue. Is it still a part of your political discourse?
No.
No. Well, let me show you. It was a very important part of our political discourse, and it was really one of at least 7 different ideals that made Americans who they were. Let me tell you about this public virtue. I have a story then to tell you. Now, as we talked about, the Battle of Lexington was the very first shots fired in the American Revolution. It's in April of 1775. And it turns out the year of 1775 is a grand and glorious year for the cause of American liberty upon the battlefield. For we have the Battle of Lexington, which wasn't much of a battle, to be truthful, one volley, but the Battle of Concord, where for the first time American militia fired upon the King's troops. And then shortly after that, of course, what remains to this day is the longest running retreat in British military history to be held under fire, as the troops came back from Concord all the way back to Boston under fire of the militia who were arriving regularly. Shortly after that, we have the Battle of Bunker Hill, where for the first time we have American militiamen standing and holding their ground firmly as we turned back rank after rank of British soldiers trying to attack our position, convincing us and many others that just possibly these American colonists might be able to prevail in a contest of arms. Oh, not to mention that we have authorized private individuals to attack British shipping on the high seas, both commercial and military, and they did so with great effect. I'll tell you the story of one of these. It was a 3-decked British man of war, just an unbelievable number of cannons, and it was captured by a tiny sloop. It was a small sloop with only 4 guns on it. How could such a small ship prevail against a large one? The ship was so small, the sloop was so small, that the British couldn't aim their cannons down at it. It was too low below the water. And they fired a cannonball at it. It would go sailing through the sails and through the rigging. And the ship just continued circling this larger ship and blowing holes in it right at the waterline. The ship was taking on water, and finally the captain gave request for quarter, having been captured by a tiny vessel with a crew of no more than 12. This story has been repeated time and time again. And during 1775, prospects for American independence, well, at least being able to defend American liberty, are looking very high. But in 1776, it is a different story. In 1776, the Continental Army will suffer defeat after defeat after defeat after defeat. And it soon becomes clear that George Washington's very special talent is to lose a battle and maintain his army to fight another day. And he demonstrated this skill many, many times in 1776. So much so that by the end of 1776, by December of 1776, the morale is extremely low in the Continental Army. There are regular desertions, soldiers just leaving their posts and going home every day. But what's even worse is that on January 1st, 1777, most of George Washington's 10,000 men are scheduled to go home. Their enlistment time is over. They have done their duty, they have served their country, and they are ready to return to manage their farms and their families. It is someone else's turn to take up the cause of liberty. Washington knows that if he cannot convince his men to re-enlist, he will have no army. And as it turns out, that is one of the requirements. It is one of the pre-requirements to fighting a revolution. You must have an army. And so Washington plans a daring raid for Christmas, for the day after Christmas, 1776. Perhaps you've seen the picture. Here is a river choked with ice. It's a clear night, and a boat is being rowed across the Delaware River. Here is George Washington standing on the ship with his foot on the gunwale. Chunks of ice in the water. A flag with 13 red and white stripes. A blue field, 13 stars arranged in a circle as they go to attack the town of Trenton. Have you seen the picture? Oh, just raise your hand if you've seen the picture. That picture is grand art. It is very, very bad history. Everything about the picture is wrong. The weather was not clear. It was a driving sleet storm. Oh, there's ice in the river, but not huge chunks of ice. George Washington would not be standing, let alone with his foot on the gunwale. The flag, for crying out loud, has not even yet been designed. But it's great art. And so he has planned to make this attack on Trenton. There is no strategic value to the town of Trenton. There is no tactical value to the town of Trenton. Washington needs a victory for one reason and one reason alone: to increase the morale of his men so that when he calls for them to re-enlist, they will be inclined to do so. The plan involves three forces converging upon Trenton at the same time just before dawn. Washington will take 2,400 men across the Delaware. He will have two other similarly sized groups attack from different positions, and they will attack just before dawn. The weather is so bad that Washington and his 2,400 are the only ones to make it across. How bad is the weather? So bad that two of Washington's soldiers will freeze to death making their way to Trenton. The weather is so bad that the pickets that are set out to watch to make sure that there is no attack coming, on the Hessian side, they shall say, "No one will attack. No sane army would attack during this weather. We are going back to Trenton." And it appears as if the attack will be a surprise. But a spy has seen the army coming, and he runs ahead to Trenton to warn Colonel von Rahl that there is an attack immediately underway of more than 1,000 soldiers. He locates the building in Trenton where von Rahl is. Standing in front of the building is a Hessian sentry, a very large man holding a very large gun. And he has been given instructions by Colonel von Rahl that under no circumstances is he to be disturbed. It's Christmas Day, and Colonel von Rahl is playing cards. The spy urges the sentry to grant him admittance. The sentry refuses. At length he says, "If you will write the message, I will see that the colonel receives it." He sends for ink, quill, and paper, and the spy hastily writes out a message describing the imminent attack. True to his word, he sends the note in to the colonel, who opens the note, glances at it, tucks it in his pocket, folds it in half and tucks it in his pocket, for he does not read English. He will not ever read the note that could have saved his life and changed the outcome of the American Revolution. The people are the attacking force is delayed. The sun, which is supposed to be a pre-dawn attack, the sun is well in the sky by the time the soldiers arrive, but the Hessian mercenaries are all hungover from their Christmas Day celebrations. And the battle lasts less than 45 minutes. Within the first few minutes, the Americans will seize control of the two cannon that are placed for defensive works. They will turn them about, point them at the town, and in the battle, 800 Hessian soldiers will be killed or captured. Not a single soldier on the American side dies in the battle. It is by far the most lopsided victory of the American Revolution on either side. If George Washington had written in his journal his highest hopes for what he might achieve at Trenton, he would not dare to have hoped as high as he achieved. The men can't stay in Trenton. The British will not let this attack go unanswered, so they stay for 2 days. They drink plenty of rum. They get warm. They are well fed. They cross the Delaware River again in reverse. Well, not in reverse. They didn't go backwards. They turned the ships around and went the other way. The day is now December 31st, 1776. Most of the men of the Continental Army are scheduled to go home the following day. Washington must build on the strength of the victory at Trenton to encourage them to re-enlist. And so he calls up the guard. The soldiers will be drawn up in their ranks. He addresses them from astride his white mare. And he does something very uncharacteristic for George Washington. He acts outside of his known authority. He does not have the authority to offer to increase their pay. But he said to them, "If you will stay on just 1 month longer, I will double your pay. He calls for those soldiers who will re-enlist to step forward. The drums roll, and not a single soldier of the 6,000 men who were fit to assemble that day, not a single soldier steps forward to re-enlist. None. This is the end of the American Revolution. If they will not re-enlist, there will be no army, there will be no United States of America. And so, from every report seems to be spoken directly from his heart, with no prior preparation. He will address the crowd again. Now, you may remember that we have some powerful orators among the founders of our nation. I mean, who is it that is the strongest orator of all of the founding fathers? His name, he was from Virginia. His name, it's not George Washington. Jefferson is no orator. His pen is unparalleled. But his voice is not one that stirs men's heart with courage. Patrick Henry. Washington, he's no orator. He avoided opportunities to speak in public. He had a farewell address when he decided that he would not run for a third term as president. He didn't even speak the farewell address. He had it printed in the newspaper so others could read it. We can count the number of times that George Washington spoke and it changed history on one hand. And this is one of those times. When no soldier advanced at the offer of double pay, he looked to his men again and he spoke this. My brave fellows, you have done all that I have asked, and more than could reasonably be expected. But your country is at stake. Your wives, your homes, and all that you hold dear. You have worn yourselves out with fatigues and hardships, but we know not how to spare you. If you will consent to serve 1 month longer, you will render that service to the cause of liberty and to your country that you could probably never render under any other circumstance. Again, he called for those that would re-enlist to step forward. Again, not a single soldier stepped forward. None. And then a single soldier stepped forward, and then another, and another, and another. And there's this moment of confusion as they're making deals. I'll re-enlist if you re-enlist. They began to advance by pairs, by larger groups, and in some cases, entire companies re-enlisted. And most of the men that were scheduled to go home the following day signed up to re-enlist. Washington's aide was there and said, "Shall we take the names of those who have re-enlisted?" And Washington said no. Men who will enlist under circumstances such as this need no writing. What is amazing to me about this story is that when Washington appealed to their financial interest and offered to double their pay, he had not a single taker. But when he appealed to their sense of public virtue, it moved most of those men to sign up to fight for more time. Public virtue. As we mentioned earlier, some of you have joined us. Public virtue is an ideal that was discussed frequently and openly in the political dialogue of the 18th century and is completely gone from our dialogue today. You don't just look at a candidate and say, "Well, I shan't vote for him, for he does not display public virtue." What is public virtue? Public virtue for you and me, for every citizen of the United States of America, is the idea that in a government that is of the people, by the people, and for the people, from time to time, every person must make an individual sacrifice for the good of the country. And that idea was held so dearly that under the harshest of conditions, an appeal to their sense of public virtue convince these men to realize. I hope for you when you come to a place such as this festival. You come here and, I don't know, how do they make paper, for heaven's sake? There it is. How do they make rope? Oh, how would you print a document or bind a book or pick flax from the field and make it into linen and stitch a waistcoat from it? Oh, you will learn all of those things. But my great hope for you is that when you leave today, you will leave with a firm determination in your heart to become better at being an American citizen. And at least in one sense, that you will re-engage this sense of public virtue, and you'll ask yourself, in what way will I take that leisure time that our life of today offers and spend some part of it in making this country better, by giving my time or my means to the sacrifice of the individual for the good of the all. That is my hope for you, and I hope that you will enjoy all the things of the festival. And remember that as you depart today. Thank you for taking your moments here to listen with me today.